Now, the next slide that I'm looking at is a structure that not all bacteria have, but they want to have it, okay? An endospore is something specific to Bacillus and Clostridium that help them during times of survival. When the conditions for Bacillus, let's say, get a little bit rough, maybe the temperature's not right, maybe the food's not right, maybe it's just not in the right environment it wants to be in, it can actually form a spore. And a spore is a very tough, very, very hard to kill part of a bacteria. If you look at the diagram, you can see the genetic material for the bacteria is in the center, surrounded by your membranes and your peptidoglycan, and then you have a cortex, a very thick cortex of peptidoglycan, this keratin coat, and all of that helps protect that genetic information, okay? Now, imagine that you could form a spore. So you get all stressed out and you just can't deal with life anymore, so you just kind of put yourself in a shell. And at that point, really almost nothing can kill you, nothing can bother you, stress doesn't bother you, food, clothing, shelter, not a problem. But when everything kind of simmers down, you get in a nice warm environment, and here clearly you think about maybe tetanus spores sitting in the soil. You just happen to walk in, you get a nice little, you step on a rusty nail. That's what my mother always said. You got to put shoes on because if you step on a rusty nail, you get tetanus. And then I didn't know enough to say, Mom, clearly I was vaccinated, it's cool. Anyways, you step on a rusty nail, what happens? That spore gets inoculated into your tissue. Well, now it's all warm, it's got good food, and it will start to do what we call germinate. That spore can convert itself into a live vegetative cell that can then replicate and then start making toxins. So in the case of tetanus, it would start secreting tetanus toxin, okay? You have to know the organisms that can actually form spores, and that's Bacillus and Clostridium. Very, very important. With the anthrax scare that we had in the U.S., back in 2001, we had spores basically that contaminated government buildings, postal facilities, for example. And once those spores get touched, again, they can germinate and then start making toxins. So it's very, very pertinent and important, again, that you know the organisms that cause spores. And when we get to those, when we talk about the specific species, we'll talk about them again in a little bit more detail.